The legacy of great kings often lives on in history books, but the deaths of these powerful rulers tell tales of their own, tales that reveal the fragility of life, no matter how invincible they appeared to be. Today, we look at the fates of some of the greatest kings who ever lived and how they met their untimely ends. Number 8. Qin Shi Huang. The first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, ruled with an iron fist and a vision to unite all under heaven. His achievements were immense. He crushed rival kingdoms, standardized currency, laws, and even writing, and began construction on the Great Wall of China. However, despite his vast power and control, Qin Shi Huang was plagued by one fear: death. To escape it, he ordered the construction of an elaborate tomb filled with rivers of mercury, deadly traps, and 8,000 life-size terracotta soldiers to guard his eternal rest. But no amount of protection could stave off his ultimate fear. Obsessed with immortality, Qin Shi Huang consumed elixirs prepared by court alchemists, elixirs laced with mercury. His symptoms worsened. He trembled, lost sleep, and grew paranoid. Despite warnings from his doctors, he continued to drink the potions, convinced they would prolong his life. In 210 BCE, while touring the eastern parts of his empire, Qin Shi Huang collapsed after an angry outburst, ordering the execution of a sea monster he believed was hindering his quest for immortality. He died a few days later, far from the immortality he sought, and to this day his tomb remains sealed, guarded by mercury, mystery, and fear. Number 7. Bayezid I, the Thunderbolt. Bayezid I, known as the Thunderbolt, struck terror into the hearts of Europe during his reign over the Ottoman Empire. With his aggressive campaigns, he expanded his empire at lightning speed, crushing crusader armies and laying siege to Constantinople. He was ruthless, feared by kings, and known for his speed in battle. But in 1402, Bayezid faced a storm that even he couldn't conquer: the ruthless Timur, also known as Tamerlane. The two armies clashed at the Battle of Ankara, where Bayezid's forces crumbled under Timur's brilliant tactics. Betrayal by his allies, including some Anatolian beys, sealed his fate. Instead of being killed in battle, Bayezid was captured and locked in an iron cage, paraded across Asia like a trophy. The humiliation drove him to madness, and in March of 1403, weakened by his wounds and poor treatment, Bayezid died in captivity. The Thunderbolt, once feared by all, passed away like an animal in a cage, his name forever tarnished by the shame of his capture. Number 6. Richard the Lionheart. Richard the Lionheart, one of the most famous crusaders in history, met a strange and almost absurd end. Crowned King of England in 1189, Richard spent most of his reign abroad, battling in the Holy Land. He survived captivity in Austria, became a living legend, and led the Third Crusade. But in 1199, as he inspected the walls of a castle he had been besieging, he was struck by a crossbow bolt from a young archer. The wound, initially minor, became deadly as Richard refused proper treatment. Gangrene set in, and after 11 days of suffering, Richard died in his mother's arms at the age of 41. In a final act of chivalry, Richard forgave the boy who shot him, but his officers did not, and the archer was executed. Number 5. Attila the Hun. Attila. The Hun, one of the most feared rulers of the ancient world, died in one of the strangest ways in history. Known as the Scourge of God, Attila led his empire across Europe, striking fear into the hearts of the Romans and Byzantines. In 453 CE, Attila celebrated his wedding to the young Gothic bride, Ildiko, on the banks of the Tisa River. He drank heavily at the feast, surrounded by loyal warriors and close companions. But in the quiet of the night, Attila died in his sleep. Some say he suffered a severe nosebleed, likely caused by years of heavy drinking and a harsh lifestyle. Others whisper that his bride, Ildiko, poisoned him, but no one knows for sure. What is clear is that the mighty Attila, who once ruled from the Danube to Central Asia, died in his bed, a shadow of the terror he once unleashed. Number 4. Mehmed Seku, the Conqueror. Mehmed II, known as the Conqueror, brought an end to the Byzantine Empire with his conquest of Constantinople in 1453. At just 21, he became a legendary figure, reshaping the Ottoman Empire. However, in 1481, his life came to an unexpected and mysterious end. After preparing for a military campaign, Mehmed fell ill, his legs swelling, and his health deteriorating rapidly. Despite treatment, his condition worsened. Whispers of poisoning spread quickly. Some speculated that his son, Bayezid, was responsible, eager to seize the throne. Others believed the Vatican may have been involved. On May 3, 1481, Mehmed died in his camp near Malatya at the age of 49. His death was kept secret for several days to prevent civil war. Whether poisoned or not, Mehmed's sudden and mysterious demise left his empire in turmoil. Number 3. Xerxes I, the betrayed king. Xerxes I, the mighty Persian king, ruled over an empire that stretched from India to Greece, commanding one of the largest armies in history. His most famous military campaign, the invasion of Greece in 480 BCE, saw his forces clash with the Greeks at the famous Battle of Thermopylae, where his army overwhelmed the Spartan warriors but ultimately faced defeat at the Battle of Salamis. Despite these setbacks, Xerxes maintained control of his vast empire. However, his reign would come to an end not by an enemy's hand, but from betrayal within his own palace. Xerxes had trusted his inner circle, and among them was Artabanus, his royal bodyguard and close confidant. But in August 465 BCE, Artabanus, driven by ambition and his own desires for power, decided that the throne should be his. Quietly, he conspired with a group of accomplices, entering Xerxes' chamber in the night and stabbing the king to death while he slept. The death of Xerxes was initially hidden, and Artabanus attempted to manipulate the line of succession, but his plan quickly unraveled. His betrayal was discovered, and Artabanus was overthrown. Xerxes' son, Artaxerxes I, succeeded him, marking a turning point in the history of the Persian Empire. The king, whose empire stretched across much of the known world, was taken down not by the might of his enemies, but by a trusted ally, a bitter reminder of how power can corrupt even those closest to a ruler. Number 2. Augustus, the poisoned emperor. Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, is credited with transforming Rome from a republic into an empire, ensuring its dominance for centuries. He ruled from 27 BCE until his death in 14 CE, reshaping the Roman world. But his death was shrouded in mystery and whispers of poison, with some historians suggesting that his wife Livia played a role in his demise. By the time of his death, Augustus was in his mid-70s, frail and increasingly weak. He had already outlived most of his family and had reluctantly adopted his stepson, Tiberius, as his successor. Augustus spent his final days in the town of Nola, where he withdrew from public life. In his last days, it is said that Livia brought him figs from the garden. Fresh and sweet, they were supposedly smeared with poison, just enough to mimic natural decline and hasten Augustus's passing. Though the exact cause of his death remains a mystery, rumors of Livia's involvement persisted, especially as her son, Tiberius, ascended to the throne without opposition. After Augustus's death, his reign was succeeded by Tiberius, but the whispers of his wife's possible involvement in his death would linger for generations. This mysterious end to the life of Rome's first emperor was a turning point in Roman history, ensuring that the empire would live on but under the shadow of intrigue and betrayal. Number 1. Henry V, the warrior king's silent end. Henry V of England, famed for his military victories and his leadership during the 100 Years' War, was one of the most celebrated kings in English history. He secured his place in history with the stunning victory at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, where his army, though vastly outnumbered, defeated the French in one of the most decisive battles of medieval warfare. By 1422, Henry had expanded his control over much of France, effectively claiming half of the country and asserting English dominance. But despite his success in battle, Henry V's death came not from the violence of war, but from the subtle force of illness. After laying siege to the rebellious town of Meaux, near Paris, Henry, who had been leading his troops in the harsh conditions of the siege, began to fall ill. He developed severe abdominal pain, fever, and dehydration. As the days passed, his condition worsened, and he could no longer maintain his usual energy. Historians today believe that Henry contracted the soldier's plague, a disease common among those who were exposed to the filth and suffering of long sieges. Despite being a warrior king, he succumbed to the illness, his body unable to withstand the strain. On August 31st, 1422, Henry V died at just 35 years old. His death left the English throne vulnerable and set the stage for a power struggle over his infant son, Henry VI. Henry's passing was a tragic end for a king who had shaped the fate of nations. His final words were reportedly to his son, Henry VI, urging him to take care of his kingdom and his people. It was a silent death, unmarked by any sword or battle, but just as final as the victories he had won. Legacy of kings. The unpredictability of death. The deaths of these great kings show how, despite their immense power and influence, none of them could escape the inevitable end that awaits all rulers. Each of them, whether it was the relentless pursuit of immortality by Qin Shi Huang, the cruel betrayal of Xerxes, or the silent demise of Henry V, faced a fate that no amount of wealth, strength, or cunning could prevent. Their deaths were often as dramatic as their lives, each ending revealing the vulnerabilities and human flaws beneath the crowns they wore. Their passing also underscores a stark truth. No matter how great a king may be, death is the great equalizer. For Rhaegar Targaryen, the idea of immortality was a fantasy, just as it was for many of these legendary kings. History is filled with the stories of kings, whose fates were sealed not by the sharpness of a sword, but by the slow and unpredictable march of time. From the mighty to the humble, no one escapes the inevitable. And as we look back at these figures, we are reminded that every kingdom, no matter how powerful, must eventually face its end.